Back here on SportsLine, Steve Layman here with you tonight as we reach the bottom of the hour, joined by Belmont basketball coach Casey Alexander and TSU basketball coach Brian Collins in studio as well. Casey, you just got back from Portugal with your Belmont basketball team, and for those people who don't know out there, college basketball teams are allowed to go once every 4 years, so theoretically once during a player's career, to take a foreign trip. And you get, 10 practices here, and then you get to go on about a week-long trip, play some games against foreign teams, and really get a very cool educational experience out of it as well. What was Portugal like?
Yeah, it was great. We had a great trip. Those trips, coaches can turn them into whatever they want them to be, and so naturally, you mentioned those practices, up to 10 practices before you leave. I think all of us are going to take advantage of that time to kind of get a jump start onto the season, and then what you do when you're there, though, can differentiate from one staff to the next. And play the games, but we don't practice while we're there. It's a lot of sightseeing and just time to be together and give our guys again, an educational piece that they would not have gotten. Maybe go overseas for the first and only time they'll ever do it.
What was the coolest thing you saw in Portugal?
Oh gosh, our guys liked all the just the outdoor activities. We went sailing, we went surfing, went to a professional soccer game, which is a different experience for everybody.
Yeah.
It was their best team, Benfica.
That's a good one.
Yeah, and so guys love that. And overall, it was just a great trip. I mean, it's a beautiful place. We literally did not see a cloud the whole time that we were there. It was 80 with no humidity and perfect blue skies, and so it was a memorable trip.
I saw some picture somewhere online while you guys were there where it looked like you were having dinner, but basically it seemed like you were on the edge of a cliff looking out over it just looked unbelievable.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, we were right there on the Atlantic. Reminded me a lot of the West Coast. If you've done the Pacific Coast Highway or Malibu, any of that region, it was, a nice cliff, beautiful water, then a little patch of sand, and then a nice cliff, beautiful water, a little patch of beach. So it was good.
How cool is it as a coach? You recruit these kids, and when you're in the living room, you talk to mom and dad, and you say, I'm gonna take your kid, I'm gonna coach him, I'm gonna be essentially dad away from home in a lot of ways for them for 4 or 5 years, make sure they graduate. But you get to take them literally on a trip of a lifetime to a place like that. To see their reactions to some of that stuff, how gratifying is it?
Yeah, it's really rewarding, and you see just the joy on their faces and the experiences, the surprises, and see them go through that in a course of a week's time and grow up a lot during that time. And that's really one of the unspoken things about being a college athlete that's really tremendous. They literally, they're going to travel this country, from left to right, top to bottom.
Over several times.
Oh, yeah, and go to great places, play in great arenas. Really a lot of good things about being a college athlete.
Weirdest arena you played in while you're there? Because I know sometimes these trips can be full of very interesting details.
Almost none of them have air conditioning. Literally, if you play in one with air conditioning, you've struck it rich. But these were okay. It was decent, I'd say. Not as good as anything we'll play in all year or practice in, but suitable for what we needed to do while we were there.
So when you go through something like that and you play, I think a lot of these games usually use international forms of rules to a lot of things. What did you learn about your team? You've got a pretty good team coming back off of last year. What did you learn about them?
Well, we got better a lot, and we played 3 games, and we approached it a little differently. We took 17 guys, 16 of which that could play, and so we had 3 games. And I deliberately, on the front end, I said we're not going to play these 5 guys in this game, these 6 guys in this game. So we only dressed whatever that is, 10 or 11 for each of the games, and then we subbed 5 at a time. So we had weird combinations. It was really kind of equal opportunity, and so that's unusual to have that opportunity as a coach to really see what guys can do. And that's what we learned. We learned, hey, given equal opportunity, how do guys separate themselves? Who are our best players? Who needs to be on the floor more? So it was really advantageous from that perspective.
How much did you coach it up versus just let the 5 guys on the floor do what you've told them already?
Well, we coached it. It was To put it in perspective, I don't think I said a word to the referees in 3 games. So
that's different.
So we didn't treat it exactly like a regular. We didn't treat it exactly like a regular season game. But we.
Of course, they may not have totally spoken the language anyway. So
they were good. But it's like we've mentioned several times, you're playing a game, and you expect your guys to do what they're supposed to do and play with a certain level of effort, and I thought our players did that.
Penny, as you look at this team coming up for your second season as TSU, as we've mentioned a couple times, who are some of the guys you're going to lean on this year?
Oh, it's a great question. I'm still really trying to figure that out, honestly. But I think the one thing that I definitely would, first of all, I'm going to tell Casey, I can tell you who your best players are. So you don't have to go find out. I got a pretty good, clear idea who your best players are. But yeah, we got a really good group of seniors that I'm going to lean on. With Michael Littlejohn is a senior. He played for us last year, averaged 11 points a game off the bench last year for us in conference play. Jalen Washington transferred from Louisiana Tech and sat out for us last year. He's been doing a phenomenal job for us, being a good leader and a good player. Emmanuel Buddha, he's another senior. He played for us last year. He was a kind of a reserve role player for us. And then our new transfer from University of West Virginia, Wesley Harris, who's a senior as well. He played in the Sweet 16, started for that team, and started for the team last year at West Virginia. And he's just another guy with a lot of good experience who's been great for us this whole summer.
You had mentioned earlier with the newcomers that you have on the team that you have several guys who are grad transfers. You've got other guys in the program who are transfers. A couple different topics there that I want to hit on both of you. One, transferring in general in college basketball. It seems like more and more of it every year. I think I saw a stat out there somewhere that basically 50% of all players transfer at least once during their college basketball career. Has this gotten out of hand?
I think it has a little bit. We have a new system in place called the transfer portal, which is basically Facebook for transfers. You log in, you put your name in there, talk to your compliance officer, and they really don't even have to ask us, really. And we'll be notified that they're in the transfer portal, and then they're essentially allowed to go out and seek other schools to recruit them. It is an epidemic right now. It's a new generation. I think a lot of it has to do with social media and bad advice from different places to going to the wrong levels and maybe not doing enough research of the program that you essentially are going to. And it's been one of those things that has been really disappointing, honestly. But as a coach, you just can control what you can control, and you try to do as much research as you can on these young men that you recruit, and hope that they stay in your program the entire time.
Casey, how should we manage this? Because we want college basketball and college athletics in general to be pro the student athlete. We want them to have the best possible experience, and sometimes, frankly, that involves having the ability to transfer and go to a better place for you for whatever reason that may be. I find it hard to believe that it's in the best interest of half of the student athletes to transfer at some point during their college career, though. Is there a better system that we can have to accomplish both goals?
Well, I think it's going full cycle right now. I mean, first of all, athletes have always had the ability to transfer. But for a long time, if you transferred to a Division I institution, you had to sit out for a season.
Right.
And now they're making it easier to transfer, and more often those transfers do not have to sit out for a season. And so that's really where the changes have occurred the most. But I think you'd have a hard time finding many of those advocates that are really pushing student-athlete welfare and those opportunities. I don't think they'd be able to make the point that the system is better now. There's more and more transfers. I don't think it's healthy for anybody in the big picture, and so it's going to be interesting to see where it goes from this point forward.
Well, it's harder to get a degree when you when you transfer and you're moving to a different school. It's frankly harder to catch on to a team. There's just a lot of things that people have to deal with. For you coaches, when you recruit these players, and let's be real, part of the process of recruiting a kid is telling him he's the greatest player of all time, he's going to fit in well at your program and going to be a star, and that's why you need him. Then when they get to campus and reality sets in that this is difficult and they're going to have to work a little bit and it may not always go their way, how do you balance that in this era where basically they can literally take their ball and go home anytime they want?
Yeah. Well, I think the main thing is that we don't tell them those things, that they're going to be a great player and they're going to get all this playing time. We tell them the truth up front. And once you do that and they get into their program, then they're not being lied to. when they come on official visits, you don't want to try to wow them with all these great parties and concerts and things that are not going to be there every day. And as long as you tell them the truth to these student athletes up front and they're seeing what college life is really going to be like, then they're more inclined to stay. And I just think honesty. A lot of kids come in now and they expect to play right away. Most freshmen are discouraged nowadays when they're only getting 3 minutes or 3 to 5 minutes a game, when in reality, that's kind of how it's supposed to go. You're supposed to build. And I just think that a little bit, pretty much this entire generation has kind of gotten away from that. It's just about me now.
I would agree with Penny. I mean, he's exactly right. And I would add that, as coaches, we have to be concerned about their whole experience. Typically transfer decisions are made because of their basketball experience. Sometimes maybe something beyond that. But, I think if you really love on them well and you have a mutual level of respect and they know that you have their best interests in mind with all the decisions that you make, then you're a little bit more likely to get those guys to hang on even though they're not playing as much as you want to. But the reality is, every Division I school has 13 scholarships, all right? Those guys that you talked about that we loved on pretty well to get to come play. So that means there's a 6-man, 7th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th, 12th, 13th on every roster who's probably not getting what they signed up for on the floor. So how do you make up for that off the floor to make sure that they stay satisfied and they love being a part of the program even though it's not personally what they're looking for?
I think both of you guys are good to have here for this next topic because it has been something that everybody who watches college basketball closely or from afar has noticed over the last couple of years. But this whole FBI investigation and looking into things with shoe companies and coaches and some of that, I have it on pretty good authority that you guys aren't running around with shoe companies and handing out $100,000 to recruits out there. So I'm not going to ask you about how you run in those circles because I know you don't. But for the people watching it that have had this sour them on college basketball and the culture going, how pervasive is it?
It's not part of what we deal with on a daily basis. It's reality that it's out there, and certainly at the Power 5 level it's more prevalent, but it's not something that we deal with on any sort of consistent basis at all. And so I'm not one to speak about it at all. I don't blame people for being soured. I think they legitimately should be, and I think we've got a lot of room to clean up what we're doing as far as recruiting goes. But a lot of that's out of our hands, honestly.
Does it sour it for you guys though? Because you're competing in the same arena as those guys. Maybe Belmont isn't in the ACC or the Big Ten or the SEC or whatever, but Penny, when you look at it, you're going into the same gyms, you're recruiting at the same tournament as some of these people, and it's pretty clear from affidavits and various things it's not the same arena when you get outside of the arena.
Yeah, well, it doesn't sour me at all, but here's the reality. If I am in a recruiting battle with a program that is doing something like that and that student athlete ends up going to that program for that reason, then they weren't supposed to be in my program anyway. Because, obviously, and Casey obviously knows kind of how our standard was at Belmont. We want certain guys in our culture, a certain type of person with character. And if you don't have that type of character and you're willing to take something like that from another program, then it wouldn't have worked out anyways here. Because like I said up front, we're going to be honest and tell kids exactly how it's going to go. So it's not going to be any handouts. But it's just one of those things that I'm kind of like Casey. I don't really have a dog in that fight. And NCAA is doing everything they need to do to clean it up, and it'll get there. It'll just take a little time.
I do think that it has a way of leveling itself out. The risk reward part of that for the programs that are willing to do it. Certainly they can catch lightning in a bottle and have a great run, and for a coach maybe that gets him a big fat paycheck somewhere. But eventually there's some dark days ahead probably for that person or that program, and it's just a tough way to live in my opinion.
I 100% would agree on that, and certainly right now I think a lot of people think it's sort of dark days for the sport at that level. So I hope you're right. I hope whether it's the feds or the NCAA that action is taken to strongly discourage this and bring this back to the playing field that we all would like it to be. Got to take a break. We will come back. We'll get into some more with these guys. Maybe some story time. They both know each other really well. We'll get into some of that when we come back right after this. This is SportsLine on NewsChannel 5+.